The sky was getting dark gradually, and there were only kerosene lamps in the cabin in the forest. The yellow light was dim, and a tall and straight man was sitting in front of the bed. The man was handsome, with sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes, and there was a bit of indifference between his brows. He stretched out a finger and poked the girl's face on the bed. Very soft, delicate, and smooth, and creamy. The man's name is Peiju. Peiju had seen quite a few women, some were tall and short, some were fat and thin. He wasn't very interested in women, and felt disgusted when he smelled the strong smell of powder on women, so he couldn't tell who those women were. Beauty is ugly. However, the woman in front of him was rather pleasing to his eyes. She was almost the only woman Peiju found pleasing to his eyes after he had lived for more than 20 years. The nose is the nose, and the eyes are the eyes. Go up and smell it, and there is only a faint fragrance of milk and a faint fragrance of orchids on your body. Peiju also felt strange, since this woman has soaked in the water for such a long time, she should have lost all smells. Why does she still have the scent of flowers? He poked the girl's face again. The girl coughed twice, frowned slightly, and then opened her eyes with difficulty. Very clear and clean eyes, black and white. She looked at Peiju vigilantly. The girl couldn't get up because of fatigue, but Peiju could see that she was very scared, very vigilant, her whole body was tense. The girl's voice was soft, not from a local, but from the southeast. Who are you from? Under the light, the girl's complexion was like jade, and she shivered like a frightened little white rabbit. Peiju said coldly, the hunter on the mountain picked you up by the small river at the foot of the mountain. Who are you? The girl looked Peiju up and down. A very handsome and tall man, with three-dimensional and profound features, good-looking, wearing common clothes. She has never seen any hunting, usually sees almost all princes and generals, all of them are dressed luxuriously, with a graceful bearing. Peiju wears it. It looks so simple, looks so cold, it should be like a hunter. After hesitating for a while, the girl said, my name is Ninger, and I am a fairy next to the Queen Mother. Because of my fate, I need to live for decades in the mortal world. You saved me and raised me well. When you come to life, I will bless you a good family, eating delicious food, drinking spicy food, and getting in and out of BMW cars. Peiju. Is he that stupid? Peiju frowned, and said coldly, tell the truth. Ninger's dark and bright eyes blinked slightly, and then said, I am the personal maid next to Miss Yuan's family in Feichen, Nankaiu country. I went to relatives in the country, who knew that there was a beast in that family, and while Our Lady was away, he insulted me because of my beauty. What's your last name? Peiju said, Peiju. Ninger hugged the quilt with one hand, and rested her chin with the other. Peiju seems to have the same name as a certain important person. Peiju raised his eyebrows. You know quite a lot. But duplication of names is quite common. Ninger sighed and said, after all, I'm the maid of a lady from a rich family. I don't know anything. Not only will I lose face, but my lady will also lose face. Brother Pei, are you the only one living here? Peiju let out a hum. Ninger said again, Brother Pei, you haven't married yet. Peiju glanced at her coldly, it's quite a lot, I don't have a wife. Ninger was temporarily relieved. At such an advanced age, he has not yet married a wife. Most likely, his family is too poor and no girl is willing to marry him. Thinking about it this way, she felt that Peiju's identity was much more real. Ninger smiled and said, in this case, I might as well stay here and bother you, Big Brother Pei. I'm used to rough work, so just call me around, and I will repay you for saving my life. Don't worry, Big Brother Pei, I will repay you. Peiju snorted coldly. He was just being kind for a while, so there was no need for this little woman to repay him. Ninger looked at the wooden bed she was sleeping on, and then at Peiju. Brother Pei, I don't feel well, let me sleep on the bed today, you sleep on the floor, until tomorrow, I sleep on the floor, you sleep bed. Peiju didn't care too much about her. The kerosene lamp was blown out, and the cabin was completely dark. Ninger did not fall asleep. In the darkness, her clear eyes were always open, neither did Peiju. The delicate fragrance of her body got into Peiju's nose. Inexplicably, he felt that this woman was a bit annoying, and her body was so fragrant. Did she want to smoke her to death? Peiju said, "Your name is Ninger, what's your surname?" Ninger smiled lightly, "The master's family name is Yuan, and I'm a maid of the Yuan family, so naturally I should be named Yuan. However, before being sold to the Yuan family, my surname was Shu, Shu's book." Peiju said again, "Do you still want to go back? I'll take you to your lady's place tomorrow. The dandy who bullies me is the lady's fiancé. If I go back, the lady will definitely be beaten to death. Brother Pei, you have pity on me. Let me stay for a few days. I will clean your room and wash your clothes. I do needlework and sell it to you for money. If you think I eat too much, I can eat less." Peiju was silent for a while, then said again, "You have a sachet on you? Why is it so fragrant?" Ninger secretly laughed in her heart. "It's really a wood that has never seen a woman." Ninger pursed her lips and said, "This is daughter's fragrance. Women have fragrance on their bodies. It's not like most men are sweaty and stinky." Peiju said, "I don't smell bad, it's so late, you go to bed." Ninger couldn't fall asleep, so she gently rubbed the center of her brows. She was seriously injured and had some old illnesses. She was in so much pain that she couldn't sleep all night. Since this man was willing to save her and slept obediently on the ground, he was probably a good man. Although her tone was blunt and cold, Ninger had a thick skin and didn't mind these things. The next day, Ninger was about to get out of bed, and only then did she realize that the cushion on the bed turned out to be a whole piece of white tiger skin. The tiger skin is soft, and although the board is hard, she squinted for a while last night. Ninger said, "I have injuries on my body, Brother Pei, have you seen it?" Peiju didn't see blood on her clothes, and didn't smell the blood on her body. Men and women couldn't kiss each other, how could he, a serious man, take off her clothes and check her body? Peiju said, "Not really." "What kind of injury did you get?" Ninger pointed to her shoulder, "Here, that gave me a hard punch. It should be a broken bone. It hurts a lot." "Brother Pei, do you know any herbs? Help me pick some herbs." Peiju nodded, "Okay." Ninger smiled slightly, "Brother Pei is really a good person." Peiju moved his eyes away from her. He felt that he hated Ninger more and more. The maid of a rich family was so unruly. She smiled at a strange man, and she smiled so brightly. Naturally, Peiju couldn't go up the mountain to collect herbs for her, so he went back to the palace and brought back some herbs. When Peiju left, Ninger opened the only window of the cabin, and soft light came in. She sighed slightly. There was a bright red palm print on Ninger's shoulder, which almost covered half of her shoulder, and the dark air spread. "Maybe I'm going to die." Ninger muttered, "Even if I'm going to die, I'll have to wait 2 months." She is not afraid of death, but there are some things that she did not explain. Ninger put on her clothes again. To be honest, Ninger doesn't want to wear clothes that she has worn once, but now that she is in this remote village, Peiju is willing to save her. She is already grateful enough to date, and can't ask for more. When she goes back, she must give Peiju, an honest man who can't get a wife, a sweet wife, and some gold, silver, and jewelry. Peiju is also good looking. If he is clean, Ninger wouldn't mind taking it. She has never had a man, and she likes this man with a clean background. But right now, Ninger can't reveal everything. Don't say anything deep in the friendship, she still hides her identity well. Before Peiju left in the morning, he didn't cook and Ninger was actually hungry. She took a look at the empty room. There were only a few pieces of animal fur hanging in the room, and there was nothing else. Ninger was so hungry that her stomach was growling. When she went out, there was green grass in front of the door, and a few rabbits were hopping around, with their long ears trembling. Ninger turned her head and thought for a while, should she catch a rabbit and roast it? Before she walked over, one of the fat grey rabbits jumped to Ninger's side. The grey rabbit's ears were very long, and the eyes were not red. Big. Grey rabbit moved its nose and kicked its legs. Ninger hugged it in her arms. She was also bored. She was so bored that she threatened this little rabbit who didn't know the heights of heaven and earth. Little rabbit, you dare to run in front of me? Do you know that I'm hungry? Not only do I want to eat you, and pinch you back and forth. The grey rabbit was rubbed back and forth by Ninger. Peiju. Peiju felt that this woman's brain seemed to be a little bit abnormal. Anyway, his mansion doesn't want such a weird woman as a maid. When Ninger heard the footsteps, she suddenly turned her head and smiled like a flower. Brother Pei. Are you back? Peiju said yes, I brought you herbs. He glanced at the rabbit in Ninger's arms. It's pretty fat, let's have it for lunch. Ninger hugged the rabbit tightly, and said with a smile, not fat, not fat, not fat at all. Wait until I raise it for 2 days before eating. She put the rabbit down. Ninger is born to be particularly fond of small animals. The rabbit clings to her, but dare not cling to Peiju. As soon as Ninger puts her down, she runs away quickly. Peiju put some herbs in front of the door. This is for healing wounds, after you smash it up and apply it on. Ninger let out a huh and her eyes sparkled. I'm so hungry, Brother Pei, can I give you something to eat? Anything is fine, I'm not picky eaters. Peiju said yes, come in. He went to the smaller cabin next door, which was a kitchen with something to eat. Ninger followed Peiju in. Peiju looked back at her. She was a small ball, her face was much smaller than his palm, she just followed behind him like a little tail. Ninger's hair was not combed, it was casually let down, and it was draped softly behind her back. The light in the kitchen was not strong, and even in such a dim situation, Ninger's skin was still white enough to glow. Peiju snorted coldly, what are you doing here? Ninger smiled and said, I'll help eldest brother cook. Peiju said, before cooking, you have to chop wood, can you chop wood? He looked at Ninger's hands. Ninger's skin is as thick as fat, and her hands are delicate, maybe she can't even lift an axe. Ninger has never learned how to chop firewood. She had never even touched an axe. Ninger said, I watched Big Brother chop wood, and when Big Brother was sweating, I handed out the handkerchief. Peiju said coldly, no need. Ninger smiled and said, is there really no need? From the first time he saw this woman, Peiju didn't have a good impression of her, he always felt that this woman gave him a very strange feeling. Now seeing her playful and bright smile, Peiju felt even more unhappy up. He said coldly, you are a girl, don't smile so brightly at men. Ninger stopped her smile, raised her eyes slightly, and said indescribably charming, oh? Girls can't laugh anymore. She laughed again, I just love to laugh. Peiju moved his eyes away. Humph. Laugh if you want. Don't be afraid to laugh your teeth out. Ninger has teeth that are as white as jade, and her smile is really beautiful. Ninger herself also knows that she is beautiful. If she is not beautiful, there will be no beautiful women in this world. This man is really a piece of wood. Wood, who is not at all tempted by the beauty. The more woody it was, the more Ninger wanted to tease him. Brother Pei, you're sweating, your neck is covered in sweat, why don't you let me wipe it off for you? Peiju split the firewood fiercely, with a click, he raised his hand to wipe it for himself, no need. Ninger didn't know anything else, she would be annoying, she dangled in front of Peiju, then let me help you carry the chopped firewood inside. Peiju snorted coldly, can you move it? Ninger was carrying a stack, but after walking 2 steps, the firewood fell from her hands with a clatter. Peiju looked at Ninger's back. She was simply wearing white clothes, the material of the clothes was very thin and clear, but there were 7 or 8 layers. When the wind blew, her exquisite figure was blown out, and a faint fragrance entered Peiju's nose. Peiju saw that she was so weak that she could be blown away by the wind. He said, "Put it there, you go and apply medicine to your wound first, I will do these things." Ninger threw the firewood on the ground with a clatter, "Cough, it's really heavy." She wiped her face with her sleeve, and when she looked back, she curled her lips slightly, "Then I'll go to apply the medicine." "Brother Pei, you are chopping firewood here, so don't peek." "Peiju. Who wants to peek? If you show him nothing, he won't look at it. When he is short of a woman." Such a flirtatious woman, Peiju didn't look at her. Ninger took the herbs that Peiju threw outside and went in. She recognized a few of them, although it didn't have much effect on her serious injury, but the herbs are also rare. This mountain is so big, it is not uncommon to have rare herbs. What is rare is that Peiju is willing to take the time to find them. Come. What an honest man! Ninger took off her clothes. Under the faint light, her skin was as white as jade, and the palm print on her left shoulder became more and more obvious. Ninger crushed a few herbs and applied them, tore off a corner of her skirt, and strangled her shoulders tightly. As a result, Ninger's skirt was shortened by a corner. She looked out with beautiful eyes. Tisk, Peiju really didn't follow that piece of wood. Really incomprehensible dumb wood. After Ninger went out, Peiju had already split the firewood and put it neatly aside. Peiju fried vegetables, cooked rice, and made a soup. Ninger held the soup bowl and took a sip of the soup. She narrowed her eyes happily, "It's delicious." Although in fact the taste was so-so, Peiju just boiled beans in water, but she still wanted to boast a few more words. Peiju also ignored her. Ninger picked up another green vegetable, and after eating, she said, "The green vegetable is also delicious." Peiju doesn't know how to cook, he usually doesn't live here, he always eats at the palace, but this woman's origin is unknown, he doesn't want to bring her to the palace, and he can't bear to let her go. There are wolves and monsters in this mountain who, she looks like a waste, she will be torn and eaten by wolves as soon as she goes out. Out of kindness, Peiju cooked for her. This is actually Peiju's first time cooking. The little woman in front of her was eating very deliciously, she was picking up the rice in small mouthfuls, the bowl was not big, it was the first time Peiju was cooking, and he was afraid that the rice would be overcooked, so he cooked very little, one small bowl for each person. Ninger was full after eating less than a third of it. She has a small appetite and can't eat any more. Ninger secretly glances at Peiju. He ate quickly but elegantly. After Peiju finished eating, he looked at Ninger, "Can't you eat any more?" Ninger nodded, "Give me a little less next time." Peiju snorted coldly, brought her bowl over, and ate up the meal for her. After eating, Ninger got up quickly, "I'm going to wash the dishes, Brother Pei, you should rest well." Peiju didn't stop her either. Ninger has never washed a bowl, and since she was a child, she has never washed a handkerchief, so the end result of her pretending to be diligent and busy is that she broke a bowl, and when picking up the pieces, she poked her finger to bleed up. Peiju closed his eyes, "Are you really a maid? Whose maid is so clumsy?" If there was such a stupid maid in Peiju's palace, he would be kicked out on the first day he entered the palace. Ninger put the injured finger in her mouth, "This." Her eyes were wet. Her complexion was so white as jade, even though her black hair was casually with a wooden stick, it was difficult to conceal her beauty. Just looking at Peiju pitifully like this actually made Peiju very annoyed. Peiju just thought it's fine if she doesn't want to say it. Ninger touched her lips and said, "Brother Pei, I'm sorry. I lied to you, I'm not the maid of the Yuan family, I'm the lady of the Yuan family. My name is Yuan Ning. My father and mother want me to marry my cousin who lives in Biwan country, that cousin is too ugly, I don't want to marry him, so I ran out, and accidentally fell into the water." Peiju said, "Tomorrow I will send you home." "I don't want it." Ninger's eyes were filled with watermarks in an instant, Brother Pei, you don't understand how painful it is to marry someone I don't love. Peiju. Peiju really didn't understand, because he is a man and can't marry. Ning'er silently said, cousin, I'm sorry for you, and said pitifully, my cousin has a cruel temperament, has 18 concubines, and he is ugly and looks like Yan Luo. He wants me to marry he, why don't you let me die, Brother Pei, if you want me to go, I'll hit my head and die here. Peiju, oh. Ning'er said, you really don't pity me. Peiju looked at her from top to bottom, I don't even know which sentence you said is true and which sentence is false. Ning'er raised her hand and swore, everything I said is true, if there are any lies, I will suffer. She wanted to say a terrible death, but she didn't say the last word, her mouth was covered by Peiju. Peiju frowned and said, don't swear seriously, I just believe you. Ning'er's eyebrows were curved, she already knew that she would die in the future, so it's okay to swear. Ning'er licked lightly on his palm. Peiju felt as if he had been burned instantly, and took a few steps back. Ning'er smiled and said, you got so close to me just now, Brother Pei, do I smell good? Peiju gritted his teeth and asked, are you really a lady? The Qinjin myths that Peiju usually sees are all extremely reserved, they would never get close to a boyfriend casually, let alone lick his hand. This little woman is so courageous, Peiju felt that she seemed to have escaped from a brothel, or she was transformed from a fox, a vixen. Peiju said with a cold face, if you want to stay with me, it's fine here, but don't be so dissolute in the future. Ning'er curled her long hair with her fingers, and bit the tip of her hair with her white teeth, but I'm such a dissolute person, what if I can't change it? Peiju said, if you can't change it, you have to change it. Ning'er was smiling, obviously she didn't listen to Peiju's words. There is no need for Ning'er to be a good woman who is well educated and reasonable, the rules belong to others, she has managed to get at ease now, but she has to be herself. It was her nature. With a cold face, Peiju washed the dishes and never went to see her again. But the touch of the palm is still very weird. Peiju still remembered the delicate fragrance he smelled on her body when he approached her just now. The tip of her tongue was silky and hot, it was the first time he touched such a strange thing. Peiju felt upset and irritable. He glanced at Ning'er again. Ning'er was dressed in tatters, the hem of her dress was torn, and her hair was only tied with a wooden stick. Even so, she didn't look down at all, wherever she stood, she seemed to be beaten up. Peiju washed the bowls and packed things, he still remembered that Ning'er's finger was cut, the bowl was made of rough porcelain, the shards were not very sharp, her hands could be cut by such shards, one can imagine Ning'er's skin is so delicate. Peiju said, if your finger is injured, you need to apply medicine, don't put your finger in your mouth, it's dirty. Ning'er said, but, I don't have any medicine. Peiju found out a bottle of Jinchuang medicine, come here. Ning'er walked over. He carefully sprinkled the powder on Ning'er's injured finger. Ning'er casually looked at Peiju. This man is very tall, Ning'er has seen many beautiful men, all of them are dragons and phoenixes, but compared with those beautiful men, Peiju is actually better, although he is a villager who hunts for a living, Peiju has a good appearance and demeanor. Seeing her staring at him shamelessly, Peiju frowned, have you seen enough? Ning'er giggled and said, no. Peiju snorted coldly, don't look at it. I'll take you to the town to buy clothes. Ning'er looked at her clothes, they were indeed tattered, but Peiju's family was completely empty, did she have money to buy clothes for her? Ning'er took out a golden bean from her body, look, this is what I carry with me, it can be exchanged for money to buy clothes. She doesn't know how much a piece of clothing costs, but a thumb-sized golden bean should be enough to buy a piece of clothing. Peiju said, you keep it for yourself, I'll buy it for you. Ning'er smiled and said, Brother Pei, are you so nice? However, you and I are not related, so it's not good to just spend your money and eat yours. From her face, Peiju didn't see any not so good. He felt that Ning'er's face was as thick as a city wall. Peiju also ignored her. Ning'er said, "How far is it from here to the small town at the foot of the mountain?" "It's too far away for me to walk. I need you to carry it on your back." Peiju said coldly, "If you can't walk, I'll just drag you away." Ning'er smiled and said, "Brother Pei, you are so honest, no wonder you don't have a wife. Women don't like you." Peiju. There are countless princesses who want to marry him, and women don't like him like this? However, Peiju also knew that those women mostly valued his status and appearance. He is cold and cold, usually no woman dares to approach him. Peiju said, "I don't care if they like it either." Ning'er tilted her head, "Isn't it rare?" "It's not unusual." The corners of Ning'er's lips curled up, "I just like you who are so honest, do you care about my liking?" This was the first time a woman dared to boldly confess in front of him, expressing her heart directly. However, Peiju would not believe Ning'er's nonsense, her casual appearance did not seem to be serious at all. Peiju said, "Close the door, I will take you down the mountain to buy clothes." Ning'er closed the door, she followed behind Peiju like a little tail. In fact, as long as Ning'er doesn't open her mouth to speak, she still looks quite well behaved. The mountain road was difficult to walk, and Ning'er was wearing a pair of delicate embroidered shoes with soft soles. After walking less than a mile, her legs became numb from exhaustion. Ning'er said, "Brother Pei, walk slowly, these shoes are too soft, I can't walk fast." Peiju was already walking very slowly. After passing a mountain spring, Ning'er stopped. The water in the mountain spring was so thin that she couldn't see anyone. However, Ning'er was a little thirsty, she scooped up a handful of water, bowed her head and drank it. Peiju stopped and turned to look at her. Ning'er drank water in small sips, like a small animal in the mountains. Peiju suddenly remembered the early spring of last year, when the snow on the mountain had just melted, a snow-white fox was drinking water by the river. Ning'er looked like a vixen. After drinking water, Ning'er wiped her hands on her body, Peiju watched her movements and was speechless for a moment. Then, Ning'er wiped the stone with her hands, and her hands were stained with a little dust. She smeared her white and tender face, her hands were also smeared, and she rolled on the ground, white clothes also became a little dirty. Peiju frowned, "What are you doing?" Ning'er's face was stained with dust, she looked a bit funny, she said, "Because I am beautiful, I am afraid that others will see my beauty." Peiju said, "Come here, with me here, no one will dare to touch you." Ning'er turned her head to look at him, "Really?" Peiju felt that this little woman talked a lot of nonsense. Ning'er said, "Brother Pei, I'm tired from walking, are you willing to carry me on your back?" Peiju refused with a cold face, "I don't want to, I have to go if I can't." He hasn't carried a woman on his back yet, so he won't touch this woman casually. Ning'er had no choice but to follow Peiju slowly. It was not until evening that she followed Peiju to the town, there were not many sellers in the town, so Peiju took her into a tailor shop, "You choose it yourself." The waiter in the store quickly came out to greet him, "Yo, brother, you brought your wife out to buy clothes." The waiter in the shop didn't recognize Peiju, but seeing Peiju's appearance, he felt that this elder brother must be able to afford things. Only this eldest brother's little lady has disheveled hair and a dirty face. I don't know why the eldest brother is blind and finds such a sloppy little lady. Ning'er went in, and the shop clerk looked at Ning'er's dirty little hands, and couldn't help but said, "Little lady, your husband must have a good eye, let your husband choose for you." The waiter was afraid that Ning'er would get his clothes dirty. Ning'er looked back and looked at Peiju, "Sir, come and pick out clothes for me, my hands are dirty, I can't touch these clothes." Peiju glanced at Ning'er coldly. "This little woman is really thick-skinned, can my husband call me casually?" Ning'er blinked at him, "Master, which one do you think looks better?" Peiju picked out a suit at random, he didn't know women's clothes, he didn't know if they were good-looking or not, he gestured to Ning twice, and felt that the length was suitable. Do you like this? Ning pursed her lips and said with a smile, okay, I like it. She didn't wear these styles of clothes very much, just looking fresh. Peiju said, go and try. The waiter was not very happy to let this dirty little lady try, but Peiju stood in front of him, the waiter dared not refuse. Peiju's aura was too strong, his whole body was as cold as iron, making people afraid to get close to him, and fear arose from the bottom of his heart. Ning went inside for an interview. Sure enough, the length is right and the size is right. She said, it's troublesome to change it back and forth, so I won't take it off. Peiju saw that she had changed into a goose yellow skirt, although her hair was half loose and her face was dirty like a little beggar, but it was much more pleasing to the eye than before. He said, for clothes of this size, bring 5 more. A little girl always needs to prepare some clothes for changing and washing. Ning is very lazy at first glance, she must not be able to do laundry every day, so she should buy a few more. The waiter in the shop smiled so hard that his face burst into bloom. Okay. Big brother, wait. Ning said, bought so much, big brother, don't you want to empty out all your money for me, right? Peiju glanced at her, don't think so much. With a little girl like her, she still wants to empty out his family fortune? Go dreaming. Peiju took the packed clothes for her, and went to another store to buy a few pairs of shoes and 2 hairpins for her. The shoes fit well, and Ning put them on straight away. When buying hairpins, Ning picked up a thin silver hairpin. The head of the hairpin was a green jade, which was comfortable to touch. She just touched it and let it go. Peiju lives in the mountains, he is not a rich person, she can't rely on Peiju to be honest and spend his money desperately. Peiju said, do you like this hairpin? Ning shook her head, generally speaking, I still like wooden hairpins, lady boss, I want this one. Ning picked up a hairpin made of wood. The proprietress looked at Peiju, then at Ning. The little lady's face was dirty, but her facial features were beautiful, her eyes were so captivating, she was very loving. The proprietress smiled and said, little lady, you are so young, it is not suitable to buy a wooden hairpin. This silver hairpin is so beautiful, and it only costs 5 taels of silver. Peiju said, I want this silver hairpin. He also felt that the wooden hairpin placed here was too old-fashioned and not very suitable for Ning. Ning smiled and said to the proprietress, 3 taels of silver. The proprietress said, 2 taels of silver? Do you want to sell it or not? Look at the jadeite on the hairpin, it's watery, but the jadeite is worth 3 taels. Ning put down the hairpin, then we don't want it anymore, brother Pei, there is also a jewelry store next door, let's go next door. The proprietress thought that Peiju was very generous, but she didn't expect this little lady to be so picky and even bargain. The proprietress said, forget it, I'll sell it to you for 3 taels. This is the first time I've lost money. Ning gathered her hair together, fixed it with a hairpin, and looked back at Peiju, does it look good? Peiju didn't speak. What's so good about a dirty little face? The two went out, there was a shop selling sweet-scented osmanthus cake by the roadside, Ning smelled the aroma, and her eyes lit up instantly, brother Pei, I want to eat it. Peiju looked at her hands, your hands are so dirty, how dare you eat? Ning smiled and said, then feed me. Peiju bought her an osmanthus cake and wrapped it in oil paper, eat slowly, don't choke. Ning said, aren't you going to eat? Peiju didn't like such sweet and greasy things. The two were walking on the street, Peiju bought another little donkey, he was unwilling to carry this woman back home. Ning is really a bad woman, what if he carried Ning on his back, and she deliberately seduced him in the middle of the walk, what if she hugged him and wouldn't let him go? Although the little donkey is not very tall, Ning stretched out her hand to Peiju, brother Pei, you hug me and sit on it. Peiju said with a cold face, sit by yourself, if you can't sit up, just walk back. Ninger had no choice but to sit on the little donkey's back by herself. At this time, the sky was dark, and there was a round moon in the sky. Ninger and Peiju were walking under the moonlight. Because the moon was too bright, the shadow of the tree was cast on the ground, and it was dark. While shopping for a little donkey, Peiju bought a pack of chestnut candies for Ninger. Ninger held the candy in her mouth and looked up at the moon. Today is July 15th, it's Ghost Festival, Brother Pei, what do you think? Will we run into ghosts on the road? Peiju snorted coldly, ignored her. What the hell, he felt that Ninger looked like a ghost. Ninger was tired after walking for a long time. She hugged the little donkey's neck and fell asleep bumpily. When they reached the mountain, Peiju pushed Ninger. It's already here, wake up. Ninger didn't even open her eyes. I'm so sleepy, Brother Pei, take me back. Peiju said, if you don't come down again, I'll leave you here alone. I'm going back to my room. Ninger finally opened her eyes. Peiju actually didn't understand why she had such a big heart as a little girl. Luckily the person she met was him. If it were any other man, with her personality, someone would definitely have strangled her to death. Ninger jumped off the little donkey. Okay, big brother, you haven't eaten yet, go make something to eat first. I won't eat, I'll go take a bath in the lake. There is a lake on the mountain. Ninger saw it when she was going down the mountain. The water quality is very good. She wanted to wash her body and change into clean clothes. Peiju nodded, okay, you can go. Ninger passed by with a brand new dress in her arms. The moonlight was like water. Ninger took off her clothes and shoes, and tentatively put her feet into the water. Ninger's feet were exquisite, and the moonlight was even brighter. The water was cold, and she slowly entered the water. Her long hair was soaked in water, making her look blacker. Ninger held a puddle of water in her hand and washed away the dust on her face. The scar on her shoulder was getting deeper and deeper, and every slight movement felt a piercing pain. Ninger sighed, and said, this cheap brother actually beat me like this and killed me, and he will not end well. Soaking in the icy water, Ninger felt the pain relieved a bit. She was really tired today, but Ninger had firmly remembered the way up and down the mountain and the surrounding scenery. She soaked for a while, changed her clothes, and returned to her residence. Peiju also had dinner. Ninger's hair was wet, she was wearing light yellow clothes, although her hair didn't drip, but it was damp. Peiju said, you sleep on the bed, I sleep on the floor. Ninger smiled and said, how embarrassing, this is your home, big brother. On the first night, I was not feeling well, so I fell asleep on the bed. Today, I am in a better state of mind. You sleep on the bed, and I sleep on the floor. Peiju said in a low voice, is there anything else you're embarrassed about? She is so thick-skinned that she calls him husband-in-law outside, so how could she be embarrassed? Ninger loves to be and set up a memorial archway. She is used to being artificial, and she can't recover in a short time. She said, after all, it's a girl's house. I'm thin-skinned, brother, do you really not sleep on the bed? I really don't sleep. Ninger took off her shoes and went to bed, then I'll go to bed. Peiju slept on the ground with a layer of mats on the ground. He was used to the hardships of marching and fighting. He is not some weak prince, he can sleep no matter what. Ninger woke up early in the morning, and Peiju was cooking, so she obediently sat on the sidelines and watched. After dinner, Peiju said, I'm going hunting and I won't be back during the day, so be honest and don't run around. There are wolves and tigers in the mountains. Once you enter the mountains, you won't be able to find your way back. Ninger nodded obediently, okay. Peiju said again, there is rice in the pot, you can eat it when you are hungry at noon. Ninger's eyes sparkled, I know. Peiju said, then I will leave. When Peiju left, Ninger led the little donkey out. The little donkey's fur was grayish-brown, it looked thin, but its personality was quite docile. Ninger led the little donkey to the lake and washed it. Take a shower and wash it off, The little donkey was not happy to take a bath, so Ninger patted it on the head. Be obedient, if you dare to be disobedient, I will kill you and eat donkey meat tomorrow. The little donkey was threatened by Ninger and kicked Ninger with its hoof in anger. Ninger got angry and didn't show mercy anymore, so she slapped the stubborn donkey a few times, until the little beast didn't dare to be stubborn anymore, and stood obediently for Ninger to take a bath. After washing, Ninger put the little donkey in the sun to dry. The grass was still green, and the little donkey gnawed the grass with its head down. Ninger also sat down, and she took off all the jewelry on her body. Peiju is really an honest person. When he rescued her, he didn't search her body to see what was on her body. Ninger put all her things on the grass, a gold-encrusted longevity lock, very vulgar, but it couldn't be exchanged for money, it would reveal her identity if she tried it, and ordinary pawn shops couldn't afford it. A collar inlaid with red gold jewels, the collar cannot be exchanged for money, but the 7 gold beads on the collar are the size of a thumb. She pulled one off yesterday. There is no mark on the gold beads, but it can be exchanged for some silver. As for the others, there are a few opals and gold blessing beads in the small purse. The quality of the opals is not bad. They are used to amuse children or reward servants. Although Jinfuzu is also used to reward servants, they cannot be used. There is also a dagger that cuts iron like mud, which is used for body protection. There are no other marks on the dagger. Ninger dug a hole, buried the longevity lock, and used a dagger to pry off the gemstones on the collar. The gemstones were kept, and the collar was buried, and Jinfuzu was also buried. There are only 7 ordinary gold beads and a few opals left, and 3 pigeon blood stones. Ninger reckons that the pigeon blood stones are the best. 3 of them can be sold for 2,000 taels, and opals can also be sold. A few hundred taels. She lives here for a while, and waits for the limelight to pass before going out. If she is lucky, and the Orion saves her, there will be inexplicable benefits in the future. If she is not lucky, she will die when she goes out. These things leaving this hunter is enough for a man living in the mountains to ask for a daughter-in-law to live a prosperous life. Ninger buried the pit, and even shoveled a piece of grass to cover it, so that no one could find it. However, no one will come here. After finishing all this work, Ninger washed her hands. The little donkey has been dried in the sun. As soon as Peiju returned to the palace, a guard who was close to him said, "Your Highness, the general of the Nankaiu state chariots and cavalry visited yesterday, and his subordinates told him that you are currently obsessed with the countryside and have no interest in government affairs, and are away from the palace most of the time. The discussion is not about political matters, but for your convenience, the General Cheki will come over this afternoon." Peiju nodded. Nankaiu State Chariot General Sujo, Peiju met him a few years ago. The two had never been in contact with each other, and for some reason, Sujo actually asked him to make things easier. Peiju dealt with a few things in the study, and before he knew it, it was already afternoon. The door was knocked lightly twice, and a maid said outside, "Your Highness, General Su is visiting, you. Let him wait in the living room for a while." Peiju said coldly. After a while, Peiju went out. Although Sujo is a military commander, he doesn't have the temperament of a military general. He is dressed in white, with black hair half up, with a high nose bridge, sharp and delicate, which adds a bit of coldness and arrogance to him, and there is always a bit of tenderness in his peach blossom eyes. Affection, the corners of the lips are naturally turned up, as if with a smile. Sujo was contradictory everywhere, but it gave people a very comfortable feeling. Peiju knew that Sujo was no ordinary person. The Su family has produced queens for generations, and they are inextricably linked with the royal family. There are serious internal struggles. Sujo stood out from the crowd when he was only in his 20s, and took over the power of the Su family. Military power, with 300,000 loyal soldiers in his hands. In front of the emperor, Sujo did not kneel down, and he could enter and leave the harem at will in Nankaiu Kingdom, Only Suzhou could do this. While Peiju was looking at Suzhou calmly, Suzhou was also looking at Peiju, the former regent of Biwen Kingdom, Peiju, king of Chu, the younger brother of the same mother of the former emperor of Biwen Kingdom, and the current emperor of the Holy Majesty. Uncle. Peiju was wearing a luxurious brocade robe, a purple gold crown, a white jade belt, and a piece of ancient jade on his waist. He was so solemn and elegant, with three-dimensional features, deep eyebrows, and cold eyes. Because he lived in a high position all the year round, he had a dignified demeanor and gave people a sense of dignity. A feeling of unbridled arrogance. Although Peiju is now in a state of losing power, Suzhou dare not underestimate Peiju. After all, this ruthless character who became famous in one battle when he was young, and led the army to slaughter 30,000 enemy troops overnight, kills like and has a cold heart. Nankaiu Kingdom and Biwen Kingdom have been friendly for generations, and there has been no conflict yet. Suzhou and Peiju had no relationship at all. At the moment, Suzhou asked for something, so it was inevitable that he would be a little gentle. Suzhou cupped his hands and smiled, and said, "I've heard about His Royal Highness King Chu's name for a long time, but now that we meet each other, I realize that His Highness is really as heroic as the rumors say." The maids served tea. Peiju took a sip of the tea, and said calmly, "General Su is overrated. I don't know why General Su is here this time. What's important?" Suzhou clapped his hands, and his attendants carried 2 boxes of treasures, and a row of beautiful women wearing veils was also brought in. A faint smile appeared on Suzhou's handsome face. "This is my little favor, and I hope His Highness the King of Chu will accept it. I really have something important to ask for this visit." Peiju didn't like the smell of makeup on the woman's body. He frowned slightly. "General Su, please speak frankly." The smile on Suzhou's face gradually faded away. He said, "I have a cousin who has been spoiled by his grandmother since he was a child. He has been lawless since he was a child. No one can control him. A few days ago, my cousin came to Biwen Kingdom with a few concubines. When it came to the robbers, the cousin and several concubines were all missing on His Highness's seal. I hope His Highness can make it easier for me to lead people to search around Lushan." Peiju said, "The land of Chu does not allow people from outside to bring troops here. The area around Mount Lu is the residence of my ancestors, and outsiders will not be allowed to set foot." Suzhou knew that it was difficult for Peiju to speak. Besides, this was not a trivial matter. Suzhou said, "I will not bring too many generals to harass the people, and allow a maximum of 100 generals to enter the country. My younger brother is a dude, but my grandmother attaches great importance to it. If she finds out that my younger brother was killed, my grandmother will be heartbroken. I hope His Highness will give me some convenience. In the future, if I find my younger brother, I will definitely present a heavy gift, and personally my younger brother to thank His Highness." Peiju glanced at Suzhou with his phoenix eyes. "General Su, why didn't you send the portrait of your younger brother, and I asked my subordinates to search for General Su? There are heroic souls of my ancestors in the Lushan area. If outsiders enter, it is disrespectful to my ancestors." Suzhou's fingers bent slightly, and his smile froze slightly. "Well, after I go back, I must find an outstanding painter and present the portrait." When Suzhou left Chu Palace, an aide beside Peiju asked, "Your Highness, why don't you sell Suzhou's favor and help Suzhou find his cousin? But it's just a trivial matter. Suzhou's power is overwhelming." He befriended Peiju's phoenix eyes narrowed slightly. "Do you really think that Suzhou would come to beg this king for a mere cousin? This man is cruel and merciless, so don't be credulous. Chu land cannot let outsiders set foot for the time being." Thinking of the strange incidents that happened in Nankaiu Kingdom recently, the staff broke out in a cold sweat. "Your Highness is still wise." Suzhou had just left Chu Palace, and the 2 boxes of treasures and 8 beauties he donated were sent back. The housekeeper of Chu Palace is a nanny who is over 50 years old, with a thin figure and a pair of sharp eyes like a falcon. The housekeeper smiled and said, it's not that our Highness does not accept General Su's affection, it's just that the matter has not been done, so I don't feel comfortable with such a heavy gift." Suzhou smiled warmly, his peach blossom eyes slightly curved, making people feel like a spring breeze. "Since the King of Chu doesn't accept it, I will take it back." "Mommy, please go back." Suzhou got into the soft sedan chair, and after a while, 8 people lifted the sedan chair up. There was also a child sitting in the sedan chair. The child was only 7 or 8 years old, and his face was 3 points similar to Suzhou's, but the child's eyebrows and eyes were somewhat childish. This is Suzhou's nephew Su Huan. Although Su Huan is young, he has a maturity that does not match his age. He said, "Yunnan Princess Yuanfei has had a different heart for a long time, she will definitely follow my uncle." "Second uncle, I looked at the terrain in the accident area and thought that my uncle might dive into the water with Yuanfei. Peiju won't allow us to search, we sent secret guards to find the lower reaches of the river in private. Yuanfei likes luxury. When she falls into the water, she must be found. If she is rescued by the mountain people, her valuables will be pawned in all likelihood. During this period of time, on the one hand, let the dark guards pay attention to whether there are too many people in each household under the river, and on the other hand, let people pay attention to the shop." Suzhou smiled coldly. "Yuanfei is such a waste, she is naturally afraid of water, so she won't dive with her." Su Huan said, "There are contingencies in everything, second uncle, let's search as I think first. The land of Chu is heavily guarded. The King of Chu is not an idler. Residents in the Lushan area can only move out. Strangers are not allowed to move here. It is not easy for the secret guards to inquire about the news." The smile in Suzhou Dehua's eyes became colder. "If I alarmed the King of Chu in private, and I will not end well." Su Huan nodded and said, "If you are in other fiefdoms of Biwen Kingdom, princes are easier to bribe. Chu Wang is arrogant, second uncle, during this time, you should visit the Chu Palace a few more times." When Suzhou returned to the restaurant and entered the room, the window was suddenly blown open by the wind, and several dark shadows entered. "Second young master." 2 ragged young women were thrown to the floor. One of the women still had some energy. She coughed a few times lying on the floor, and suddenly raised her head. "General." Suzhou raised the hem of his white robe with one hand, leaned over and said, "I want you to take good care of people." "What about people now?" The woman said, "Princess Yunnan took the lord away and said that he wanted to join you, General." Princess Yunnan was accompanied by 3 noble ladies. "We blocked the assassins in front and were knocked down to the bottom of the cliff." Suzhou's face was livid. "Which side is the assassin from?" The woman shook her head. "This subordinate doesn't know." Su Huan walked over slowly, and said, "Second uncle, lock these 2 women up first, and now write a letter to ask your family's cronies to contact the people in the original family. We will search for the whereabouts of Princess Yunnan and my uncle in the past 2 days." Suzhou took a few steps, and finally nodded. Su Huan was only as high as Suzhou's waist, and his eyebrows and eyes were very immature, but he was born good-looking, like a fairy child. He said, "Next time I go to Chu Palace, I hope you can take me with you, second uncle." When Peiju returned to the mountain, it was already dark. With the wind blowing, he could smell the smell of burnt things from a distance. Walked over quickly, Peiju found half of the kitchen was burnt, the remaining half was blackened, and there were still some sparks on the wood. "Peiju." His face turned cold. "Yuan Ning." The door of the wooden house opened, and Ning came back covered in ashes. Her eyes were sleepy, and she rubbed her eyes with one hand. Peiju looked at her carefully. Ning's body was dirty, and her face was smeared black. She opened her eyes in confusion. She should have just woken up. She looked at Peiju. "Ah, brother Pei." Peiju pointed to the side. "What's going on?" Ning rubbed her nose in embarrassment. "I just wanted to make a meal, but I didn't expect to burn half of the house down." Peiju didn't believe it. "Half burned?" How did you put out the fire? There is still half a tank of water, I poured out a little, and I used soil to put out the fire. Ning'er said, fortunately, the fire is not too big, but it will exhaust me to death. Peiju didn't bother with this little trash anymore. He took out a bag of snacks, I brought it for you, wash your hands before eating. Ning'er took it over, thank you Brother Pei. By the way, Brother Pei, you go hunting, where is the prey? Sold. Peiju said, I'll go to bed first. Ning'er put the snacks aside, took her clothes and took a shower. After returning, Ning'er sat on the stool to eat some snacks. Peiju had already made the floor and lay down. Ning'er took small bites, Brother Pei, are you exhausted today? Do you want me to accompany you tomorrow? No need to. Peiju's voice was ice cold, he was a cold and hard person. Extremely bad attitude. Ning'er didn't care, anyway, she had a thick skin, but I'm so boring here by myself. Then I'll take you back to your house. Ning'er rubbed her nose, ah, you don't want to take me home. This is my third night here. Ning'er was barely able to close her eyes and go to sleep. She has been sleeping very badly lately. She sleeps all night, but she can only sleep for a short time. Peiju felt the woman's breathing gradually eased, and he also closed his eyes. Peiju has lived for 23 years, this is the first time there is a woman's fragrance in his life. Peiju was a posthumous child, and his mother passed away during childbirth. From the moment he was born, Peiju seemed to be a curse, and everyone in the royal family respected him at a distance, except Peiju's elder brother, who was also the first emperor. The first emperor, Tiankai Emperor, was born to Peiju's mother. 3 years ago, Tiankai Emperor passed away, and the crown prince Peiyin ascended the throne, named Mingxi. Peiyin's mother's queen came from the Xing family, and the queen mother Xing was close to her mother's family, fearing Peiju's power. Emperor Ming Si is weak and afraid of Empress Dowager Xing. Empress Dowager Xing knows that Peiju is loyal to Emperor Tiankai and will not seek rebellion. Emperor Ming Si is the son of Emperor Tiankai, so Peiju will naturally be loyal to the emperor, so Emperor Ming Si and the Xing family provoked many times, forcing Peiju to hand over his military power. Peiju is not a weak person, but Emperor Tiankai still has 3 princes, and these 3 princes' mother clans are weak. Empress Dowager Xing threatened with the lives of these 3 princes, and vowed that as long as Peiju handed over his military power and left the capital, he would die. It will not endanger the 3 princes. For so many years, Peiju was busy with court affairs and never got close to women. He actually doesn't like women. When he was leading the army, the enemy also resorted to beauty tricks to penetrate into the barracks, but Peiju had never been fooled once. Probably because he dislikes those women who are pretentious and slutty like vixens. Peiju thought that the woman he liked would be a very serious lady, but he suddenly discovered that he didn't seem to dislike Ning'er. Even if Ning'er's words and deeds are more bold and exaggerated than any woman he has ever seen. Peiju didn't want to think more, he felt that maybe he and this woman just didn't hate it, and there was nothing else. There was a faint fragrance on Ning'er's body, the whole room was filled with her fragrance, it smelled really good, but Peiju turned his back on it. In her sleep, Ning'er felt as if someone was pinching her neck, and her breathing became more and more difficult. Suddenly, an overly handsome face appeared in front of him. It was a man, delicate and glamorous, with a bright red flame pattern between his brows. The man was wearing a red robe, and his left hand was pinching Ning'er's neck. There was a gloomy and cold look on his lips. Smiling, "Good sister, how do you want to die?" Ning'er screamed and broke out in a cold sweat. It was still dark, and the cabin was still dark. The dream just now was so real that Ning'er's body was trembling all the time. In the darkness, her face was pale. Peiju was naturally woken up by her scream, "A nightmare!" Ning'er reacted for a long time before finally realizing that the place she is currently in is not her usual place. Here she is safe. However, Ning'er still felt fear. In the dream just now, she felt that as long as the man had a little more strength, she would die. She was actually so close to death. Ning rolled off the bed, and got under Peiju's quilt a few steps. "Brother Pei, I'll warm your quilt." Peiju gritted his teeth and said, "Get out." Ning clung to him like an octopus. "Don't roll." Peiju had never seen such a brazen woman who would climb under a man's bed in the middle of the night. Ning's body is light and soft, with a faint fragrance of milk and orchid on her body. She put her arms around Peiju's neck. "Anyway, you don't suffer, what's wrong with staying with me all night?" Peiju's body was stiff, and in the end, he had no choice but to give in to her. "Don't touch me, sleep peacefully." Ning smiled, "Okay." This man was also clean, with a faint woody aroma, which Ning found very familiar and reassuring. The next day, when Peiju woke up, Ning in his arms was still soundly asleep. She was wearing a goose yellow shirt, and the ink was scattered. In fact, just looking at Ning's appearance, it is impossible to see that she is so bold and shameless. Ning's complexion is very fair, like ice and snow, with long eyelashes and upturned eye tails, and there is a slight sense of weakness between her eyebrows and eyes, as if she is congenitally deficient and has a disease, which arouses the pity of men. When she was sleeping soundly, there was a little coldness between her brows, which softened a little of her frailty and made her appear more serious than usual. She is too slender, Peiju is very strong. As long as he stretches out his hand to pinch, he can strangle this little trash to death. Peiju is tall, but Ning is petite and exquisite. She hangs on him like a frail little fox hangs on a tiger. If she doesn't open her eyes or open her mouth, it will be very imaginative, making people think that she is pure and innocent, an innocent girl. Unfortunately, deep down, this woman is just a vixen. Peiju pushed Ning away. Ning muttered a few words, speaking in the dialect of Nankaiu country. Her voice was soft, as if soaked in warm water, lingering. Although it might be a curse word, it was just nice. Good to hear. Before meeting Ning, Peiju only occasionally stayed here for one night. Most of the time, he was still in the palace. He just pretended to go out by himself, was intoxicated with the countryside, and didn't care about other things. Empress Dowager Xin kept sending eyeliners over, fearing that Peiju would cause troubles in Chu. Although Empress Dowager Xin believed that Peiju would not rebel for the sake of the former emperor, he would eventually become suspicious. Now, after picking up this little trash, which can set the house on fire for cooking, Peiju has no choice but to live here. Otherwise, if Ning is left alone, she may starve to death or be picked up by wolves have eaten. It's not that she hasn't considered bringing Ning back to the palace, but Ning's background is unknown and her temperament is weird, so she can't trust her for the time being. When Peiju left the room, Ning also woke up. She rubbed the center of her eyebrows. Her fingers were slender, delicate, and white, softer than a baby's skin. Ning half closed her eyes, her long eyelashes covered the light in her eyes, and her black hair was loose on her shoulders, like a cloud. Her fingertips tapped the ground lightly, and she slowed down for a long time before she recovered. After all, there were serious injuries on his body, and every morning when he woke up, his shoulders were piercingly painful. Half of the kitchen was burned down by her, so Peiju made some food for Ning casually, and in the morning, he went to chop down trees and rebuild. Ning originally wanted to help Peiju, but Peiju despised her for being too stupid. She touched her nose, and finally rode around on a little donkey. The nearby green hills are stretching and beautiful. The mountain where Ning and Peiju are located is not too high. She rode a little donkey and went down the mountain. Passing by a pool of water, Ning looked at the reflection in the water. Her eyebrows are exquisite, beautiful, and natural. Her black hair is tied casually with a hairpin, and although the light yellow shirt she is wearing is not exquisite in workmanship, it must be Ning's face that others can see at a glance. Ning touched her face again. She felt that it was unlikely to be recognized. That day when she and Peiju went down the mountain, she felt that the people in this place were simple and safe, and it was said that the king of Chu valued this place. Ordinary people would not dare to come here, make a mistake here. She went down the mountain, bought a piece of pastry and ate it, because it was too beautiful, so even if the posture of sitting on the donkey was not beautiful, and the movement of gnawing the pastry was not elegant, passers-by still looked at her. Ninger grinned and said, "What are you looking at, and then let my husband gouge your eyes." A passer-by laughed and said, "You fierce little lady, have you been spoiled by your husband?" Another passer-by asked, "Little lady is already married? I wonder which husband is lucky enough to marry you." Ninger invited Jiao to point, "Did you see that? The one on that mountain, surnamed Pei, is a hunter with very good skills. I was originally a servant girl of a rich family, and my husband-in-law bought me home as his wife." Passers-by looked in the direction of Ninger's finger. The scenery in Chudi is beautiful, here is surrounded by mountains and rivers, the sky is extremely clean, and the nearby green hills are even more picturesque, making people feel like they are in a fairyland. Passers-by have also lived here for many years. Knowing the Lushan area, the reason why it was valued by the king of Chu was because the founding emperor went south in his later years and passed through Chu. Seeing the beautiful scenery here, he said that he would be buried here after death. The emperors of all dynasties had to build luxurious mausoleums from the time they succeeded to the throne. The founding emperor was simple in nature and didn't care about what happened after death. Although it is not known which mountain the founding emperor was buried on, it is somewhere within a radius of tens of miles. The king of Chu often brings people to worship. It is said that there will be a tomb somewhere on the mountain, and the king of Chu's men will visit the tomb from time to time. Few people live on the mountain, and some mountain peaks are not allowed to go up at all. If you can live on the mountain, you may have something to do with the king of Chu. Furthermore, the surname of the king of Chu is Pei, and the surname of this little lady's husband is also Pei. Most likely, her husband is a slave of the royal family and was sent here to sweep the grave. How dare ordinary people dare to mess with the people in Chu Palace? Passers-by thought, no wonder the little lady is so aggressive. Ninger smiled and said, "Brothers, do you know where there is a shop? My husband's birthday is coming up, I will the hairpin on his head to make clothes for him." A passerby did not know where the shop was. The other pointed out the way for Ninger, "Ride on the donkey and go forward. When you get to the end, turn left and you'll be at the third house." Ninger went into the pawn shop, and the little guy in the shop was stunned for a moment, having never seen such a beautiful woman. Ninger the little donkey and asked the boy to watch the donkey for her outside, and she went in to meet the boss. The boss was dozing off when Ninger knocked lightly on the door with his fingers. When he opened his eyes, he saw a girl in a light yellow shirt walking in. The girl has black hair and snow skin, so beautiful that she doesn't look like a real person, and her voice is clear and crisp, very sweet. "Boss, I want to be something." The boss sat down, "I don't know what the girl wants to be." Ninger rolled her eyes lightly, and a smile appeared on her lips. "How much money can I get for this hairpin on my head?" The boss looked at the hairpin that Ninger bought with 3 taels of silver 2 days ago, and said, "At most half a tael of silver." Ninger rubbed the hairpin on her head lightly with her fingers, feeling somewhat aware of it. She said, "My husband's birthday is coming, I want to tear a piece of cloth to make clothes for him, half a tael of money can't buy any good cloth." The boss smiled and said, "I really can't add any more. I only offered half a tael of silver because I saw that you look good, little lady. If it's an ordinary person, I'll only give you 700 coins at most." Ninger put one hand on the counter. "My mother left me a few pieces of jewelry, which are quite valuable, boss, would you like to see them?" The boss nodded. "Little lady, take it out, I will never cheat you. If you dare to lie to me, I'll ask my husband to clean you up." Ninger took out a bald handkerchief from her sleeve. "I'm a girl, so I don't know anything, boss, can you tell me about it? What does your shop rely on for a living? If I things and stop buying them, will anyone be willing to buy second-hand ones?" There are people who want second-hand things. The boss said with a smile. A few days ago, there was a big boss who came from out of town. He specialized in collecting valuables in the pawn shop. He wanted all kinds of gold, silver, and jade. Since you're a big boss, what do you do with the second-hand stuff? Use it for yourself or resell it? It's really strange. Ninger blinked her eyes. If it's reselling, it would be more cost-effective to open a shop myself. The boss said, it's really strange. They received some valuable things, and they would ask what the customers who bought the things looked like. I think they might be looking for people by collecting things. Ninger curled her lips. She opened the veil, and under the layers of wrapping were several golden green opals. Ninger said, Boss, look at these 3 stones. The boss reached out to take it, but Ninger quickly took it back. Hey, just look at it, don't touch it. The boss is able to sit here, he is naturally a knowledgeable person. Before he opened his mouth, Ninger said, 800 taels. The boss said, no, at most 500 taels. Ninger put the handkerchief away again, and while she was putting it away, she said, I thought you were a smart man. Forget it, 500 taels pawned the treasure my mother left me. I'm so sorry for my mother. It just so happened that I gave birth to a baby girl last year, and this gem is reserved for my baby as a dowry. The boss really likes these 3 opals. The gold green opal is the best, and the folks can hardly see it. The general gold green opal is about the same value as the red sapphire. 800 taels was collected, and once he changed hands, he could sell it for almost 1,500 taels. The light came in through the window, and the boss said, Little lady, can you put the opal under the light for me to see? Ninger said, okay, add 100 taels, 900 taels. The boss got angry, you little lady. Ninger is best at guessing people's hearts. She glanced at the boss lazily, isn't there a big boss who is collecting these recently? Boss, you can find someone else if you change hands, why bother to deceive me? The boss said, where am I cheating you? Little lady, you go out of this door and see who can offer a higher price than me. Ninger turned her head and left. Okay, I'll go to another place to ask. The boss was really afraid that Ninger would leave. After all, the top quality opals are not easy to collect, so he said, hey, little lady, forget it, don't run far away, it's very hot outside, let's discuss it later. Ninger blinked her eyes, 1,000 taels. The boss saw that the little lady was gentle on the surface, but her heart was as hard as iron, so she had to compromise. 1,000 taels is 1,000 taels, you put it under the light and let me see. Ninger opened the veil again, the light shone, and several bright bands appeared on the golden green opal. As the opal moved, the bright bands also moved, and the boss almost looked straight into his eyes. Okay, just 1,000 taels. Ninger smiled slightly and said, my husband lives on the nearby mountain. He is very skilled in martial arts. Boss, if you dare to do something wrong, he will definitely not let you go. 1,000 taels of silver is too heavy. I can't take it away, and I don't want it. Banknotes, boss, you can exchange them for gold bars of the same value, and give me some loose silver to let me go shopping for vegetables. The boss also noticed that the little lady in front of her was beautiful and eloquent, and she would never let her suffer a little when she opened her mouth. She didn't look like she came from a small family. Those who can marry this little lady are probably inseparable from the palace. After all, there are the most people in this area of the palace. The people living in the area under the Chu Palace are rich and dare not deceive people at will. He took out the same amount of gold bars and gave him 5 taels of broken silver. Ninger weighed one of the gold bars, squeezed it again, and exchanged the silver for gold, and got about 50 taels of gold. It's too heavy to hold. Trading 3 small gemstones for so much gold, Ninger didn't realize that she was spending money like water. At that time, she knew that she was the most unfortunate person in the world. Now that she thinks about it, she is the most unfortunate person in the world. People may beg in some corner, living a life without enough food and clothing. Ninger bought 3 cakes, ate one for herself, fed one for the little donkey, and wrapped the last one in oiled paper for Peiju to take. Ninger was very curious, and she was curious about everything she saw. She bought some random things with the 5 taels of silver in her hand, and ended up with 2 taels left over. Ninger drove the little donkey up the mountain, and the little donkey ate the cake that Ninger gave him, but didn't dare to play its stubborn temper, so he quickly brought Ninger up the mountain. It was already evening, and Ninger saw from a distance that the kitchen had already been repaired. She jumped off the little donkey, took all the things, and casually said to the little donkey, "Go graze." The little donkey shook his head and went to graze. Ninger knocked on the door, "Pei." Before the words were finished, the door was suddenly opened. She smiled like a flower, "Brother Pei, I'm back." Peiju frowned and said, "Where did you go?" Ninger put the cake wrapped in oiled paper into Peiju's hand, "Here, Brother Pei, I brought it for you." She put all the other odds and ends she bought by the window, and put the gold on the table. "I have a few gems on me, and I just went down the mountain to sell them for a bag of gold, Brother Pei, as your reward for saving me." Peiju didn't even look at the things she put on the table. He tasted the shortbread that Ninger brought him. There was a layer of candy inside. Peiju didn't like sweet ones, but he still ate them bit by bit. Seeing that Peiju ignored her, Ninger leaned closer, "You don't even look at me? I brought you something to eat anyway, aren't you too cold-blooded?" Peiju took a step back, "A man and a woman can't kiss each other, don't get so close to me." Ninger pursed her lips and said, "Who did you hug to sleep last night?" "Peiju," Ninger smiled, took off her shoes and lay down on the bed, "I'm going to be exhausted today, so don't quarrel with me." Peiju wiped his lips with a handkerchief. Ninger was obviously a slovenly and clumsy little waste who threw things around and went to bed without changing her clothes. Today, in the middle of his work, Peiju found her missing, afraid that she would be eaten by wild beasts in the mountains, so he searched everywhere until he reached the foot of the mountain. Only then did he hear a little boy herding sheep that she had gone to the town. At that time, Peiju thought she was going to leave, but unexpectedly she came back in the evening. He tidied up Ninger's messy things piled up by the window. It was a delicate little box. When he opened it, it was glowing red with a fragrance. It should be rouge for women, as well as face powder and handkerchief. Small fan, small mirror, small comb. Peiju took a look at Ninger. She was lying on the bed, curled up into a small ball, probably tired from walking outside. He arranged them one by one. Peiju also placed the bag of gold on the table by the window. The gold is not much, compared to Peiju's wealth, it is a drop in the bucket. He took in this little trash, and never don't expect anything from her. It was getting dark little by little. Peiju pushed open the door and came outside. The sky was full of stars, the night sky was dark blue, and the forest trees became a dark black in the night. He looked towards the sky. A meteor flashed by. Peiju's eyes were cold, and after a long time, when Peiju returned to the room, Ninger was already fast asleep. The window was wide open, the gentle breeze came in, a little light came into the room, the fragrance of orchid was faint. Peiju looked at the bed. Ninger's face was particularly unreal under the light and shade. Peiju still remembered that last night when she suddenly got into his quilt, the refreshing fragrance and soft and warm touch rushed to her face. He was originally a piece of ice, no one dared to approach him. But she was wild, so bold. After hesitating for a few seconds, Peiju's rough fingertips lightly touched Ninger's delicate and soft cheek. At this time, Ninger suddenly opened her eyes, covered her shoulders, and spat out a mouthful of blood with a wow. Peiju was taken aback. He pressed Ninger's shoulder, "Yuan Ning." Ninger didn't speak, and didn't answer him at all. She seemed to be in great pain, and her whole body was trembling slightly. Peiju suddenly remembered that day when she said that she was injured. The room was too dark, Peiju lit a kerosene lamp. The light was dim, but this small area was illuminated. He raised his hand to wipe a trace of blood from the corner of Ning'er's lips. She was unconscious, her long eyelashes trembled slightly, her smile like a flower in the past was no longer there, the blood color faded from her face, it was as white as ice and snow. In fact, when I go to see Ning'er at this time, I will find that she is actually not sweet, but calm and alienated. At this time, she does not make any expressions, which is more real, and has a more pure feeling. For a moment, Peiju thought he was crazy, that's why he felt that Ning'er was pure. But if she didn't wake up, she would just fall into his arms with such a blank expression, it would indeed give him such a feeling. She was injured and now unconscious. Peiju didn't know where she was injured, he hesitated for a long time. Peiju put his hand on Ning'er's skirt, he just pulled a corner of Ning'er's clothes, when his wrist suddenly snapped was held. There was a trace of blood at the corner of Ning'er's mouth, her beautiful eyes were narrowed, and she was a little cold. What are you doing? Peiju let go of her. Ning'er fell on the pillow, she was in pain like 10,000 worms eating her heart, and cold sweat broke out on her forehead instantly. Peiju said, "Where did you get hurt?" Blood dripped from the corner of Ning'er's mouth. Peiju felt that something was wrong, so he grabbed her chin forcefully, forcing her to open her mouth. It was the tip of her tongue that was bitten off, no wonder she spoke so vaguely and slowly just now. Peiju forcibly sealed her acupuncture points, broke her chin, took a veil to wipe her blood. She didn't know where she got the strength to bite so deeply. Peiju thought that if his movements were slow, she might have bitten off his tongue. Peiju took the blood-clotting pill and forced her to take it, and then he unblocked the acupuncture points for her. Peiju said again, "Where is there any injury on your body? What kind of injury is it?" Ning'er pointed to her shoulder. Peiju said, "Can I have a look?" Ning'er nodded. Peiju stretched out his hand and took off Ning'er's clothes again. This time, he hesitated longer. Peiju's hand touched the soft fabric of her body, he hesitated for a long time. Peiju originally thought, "I am responsible for you, if you have no one to marry. Then follow me." But when the words came to his lips, looking at Ning'er's crystal clear eyes, Peiju couldn't speak again. "After tonight, I will forget about what happened tonight." Peiju said, "I have completely forgotten it." He ripped off Ning'er's clothes. Ning'er's clavicle is slender, like a light stroke of a paintbrush, her skin is fragrant, and her complexion is snow white, as if a light pinch will reveal red marks. Peiju's eyes flickered slightly, and he saw the palm print on Ning'er's shoulder. It seemed to be dark and clear, and this palm print was incompatible with the weak and pitiful Ning'er. He quickly pulled her clothes up. "It's only hurt here." Ning'er nodded. Peiju said, "The internal injury is the main one, I will use my internal force to suppress you first, and I will take you to see a doctor tomorrow." Ning'er bit her tongue, she couldn't say anything for a while, she just shook her head. Her injuries are easily identifiable, and someone from the shop has already started to check, and the nearby medical clinic will definitely be checked by someone. Peiju's hand was placed behind her back, with a slight force on the palm, a warm current poured in. Ning'er's body was too weak, she couldn't bear it for a while, she fell into Peiju's arms. Peiju put her down on the bed. The scene just now is still lingering in Peiju's mind. Peiju is not a person who is greedy for sex, but he is in front of his eyes, so he can't help it. He gently pinched Ning'er's chin, forcing her to open her mouth to see if the tip of her tongue was still bleeding. After taking the anti-bleeding pill, the bleeding stopped for the time being. Peiju wiped her again with the handkerchief. Originally he wanted to sleep on the floor, but there was enough space on the bed. Peiju was worried that Ning'er would bite her tongue after having a nightmare at night, so he lay down with her. Her breathing was uneven and her face was still pale. Peiju raised his hand and turned off the light of the kerosene lamp. There is a smile in Sujo Dehua's eyes. He is wearing a bamboo green uniform, his black hair is half with a headband of the same color, and he is playing with 3 golden green opals in his hands. Who are the customers of the 3 opals? There was a thick layer of blankets on the floor, and the carpet was woven with intricate patterns. A man half kneeled on the ground and said, "Return to second young master, this subordinate has already questioned her carefully, she is a woman." The pawn shop owner said that the woman was married, but she was young, with a sharp tongue, eyes like spring water, white as snow, lively temperament and light body. She came here riding a little donkey, and left on a little donkey. The man continued, "The woman is in the Lushan area, and may have something to do with the Chu Palace." These 3 opals were passed down from the woman's mother. Jiao exerted a little force with his fingertips, and several cracks appeared on the opal. Before he could speak, Su Huan came over. Su Huan made a cup of tea and put it in front of Su Jiao. "Yuan Fei has a gloomy temper, and she has eyes like spring water. She likes to put on airs, and she doesn't want to ride a horse. How can she ride a donkey? An ordinary rich family, if you can take out these gadgets as family heirlooms, it is even more likely that they are related to the Chu Palace. You idiots, can't you tell them apart?" Su Jiao made a gesture, and Su Huan sat down. The man on the ground said, "This subordinate will. Let's find out about this woman again." Su Jiao said, "If you can meet again, remember to bring her portrait." The man clasped his hands and said, "Yes, this subordinate knows." When the man stepped back, Su Huan said, "Second uncle, opals are not uncommon. We have also received a lot of jewelry in the past 2 days. Why did you?" Su Jiao put the opal in Su Huan's hand. "I have my own consideration." Su Huan and Su Jiao were foxes carved out of the same mold, an old fox and a young fox. He looked at the opal in Su Jiao's hand. No matter how he looked at it, he couldn't see any clues. The next day, when Ninger opened her eyes, she found that her hand was pressed under her body. She frowned slightly, recalling what happened yesterday. When Ninger woke up, Peiju woke up too. Ninger's tongue was bitten, and now she can't say anything. Peiju pushed her away. Ninger rubbed her eyes and sat up. She was delicate and weak, sitting on a tiger skin mattress, out of tune with the environment. When it was time to drink the porridge, Ninger had a wound on the tip of her tongue, so she had to carefully blow off the porridge before drinking it. Peiju glanced at her from time to time. She puffed out her snow-white cheeks, blowing the heat of the porridge. Her lips were slightly pursed, looking pink. After eating, Peiju said, "I'll bring a doctor to treat you." Ninger shook her head. Her tongue hurts when she speaks, but she can't say anything. There are no banknotes here, so she can only open her mouth and say slowly, "No." Peiju raised his eyebrows. "Hey." Ninger thought for a while, and said, "An ordinary doctor can't cure it. Besides, I am a daughter's family, how can I let the doctor look at it at will? Ask a female doctor for you." Naturally, Peiju knew the female doctor. He also saw the depth of palm strength Ninger received last night. If not treated, her life might be in danger. "I don't want it." Ninger turned her head away, and said slowly with her crippled tongue, "I don't want it. The doctor saw that I need to take medicine. The medicine is too bitter, and I don't want to drink it at all." Peiju was so annoyed by this pretentious little woman. Her life was about to die, but she was still thinking about the pain of medicine. Peiju said, "I'll buy you candy." Ninger turned her face away, looking aggrieved. "Don't eat candy." To be honest, Peiju really didn't know what to do with Ninger. Ordinary men get married and have children at the age of 15 or 16, and Peiju's age has sons and daughters, but Peiju has nothing. Looking at the little girl jumping around in front of his eyes, it really feels like raising a daughter. "If you don't see a doctor, you will die." Peiju said bluntly, "Do you want to die?" Ninger nodded. Peiju. He was really going to be off by this little girl who didn't follow the rules. After returning to the mansion, as soon as he arrived at the study, a man knocked on the door and came over. "Your Highness, we have probably found out. There is turmoil in Nankaiu, and it is estimated that there will be a coup within 3 months, and there will be fierce battles with the King Rong party. This time, I am afraid that something big happened during the struggle between the two parties. The man handed over a booklet, all the contents of the investigation are written on it. Peiju glanced hastily, was startled, and continued to look. Yunnan Princess Yuanfei. Peiju narrowed his eyes. Yuanfei and the current crown prince had been engaged long ago, and Suzhou and the entire Sui family were all members of the family. Naturally, it was not because Suzhou lost a brother, but because the quasi-princess concubine disappeared. There is no portrait of Yuanfei in the brochure, but it describes the evaluation of Yuanfei by the people in the capital as brilliant, smart, soft skin, beautiful appearance, talented and beautiful like a prince. All the above, almost convinced Peiju that Yuan Ning is Yuanfei. But why is Ninger unwilling to go back? Could it be? Peiju's finger tapped lightly on the table. Could it be that Ninger doesn't like the crown prince of Nankaiu kingdom? However, who caused the injury on Ninger's body? Could it be that the crown prince of Nankaiu kingdom had a vice and hurt her? When she went back at night, Ninger was sitting on a tree with a rabbit in her arms, and she didn't know how this useless woman climbed up the tree. Peiju said coldly, "What are you doing up there?" Ninger turned her head. "Ah, big brother Pei, you're back? I've been watching from the tree to see when you'll come back, but I lost my mind." Peiju said, "Come down." Ninger giggled, "Okay, you can continue." She spread her arms and jumped down. Peiju caught her without hesitation. Ninger's body was light and soft, and what came to her face was a faint scent of orchid musk mixed with a slightly childish milky scent. Peiju's fingers slightly bent. This little girl is not tall and has a childish temper, but she has developed very well. Ninger threw the rabbit in her hand to the ground. The rabbit was startled and ran away alive and kicking. Peiju said with a cold face, "Aren't you coming down yet?" Ninger hooked Peiju's neck with one hand. "Tisk tisk, brother Pei, your body is really strong." "Brazen." Peiju put Ninger down with a look of disgust. Ninger made a face. Peiju began to wonder if Ninger was the talented girl Yuanfei who was famous in Nankaiu. Yuanfei, whose father is the Dr. Jinzig Wanglu and Yushi Zhongcheng, the founder of Yuanying, the emperor once gave Zijin fish bags, and his mother is Princess Jinglian, the sister of the Emperor of Nankaiu Kingdom. It is said that before Yuanfei was born, Princess Jinglian dreamed of phoenix the tail swept across the treetops, and Yuanfei was named Princess Yunnan on the day she was born. When Empress Su was pregnant with the prince, she dreamed of a golden dragon in her bosom. On the day the prince was born, there was a golden light in the sky, as if a golden dragon flew by. Therefore, the emperor betrothed Yuanfei to the prince. She was born noble, and her temper was nothing to be proud of. However, like Ninger, she doesn't shy away from the relationship between men and women at all, and she talks nonsense. Not at all like a princess. Peiju said, "I have already found a doctor for you, and I will take you to see it tomorrow. Your body can't be dragged any longer." Ninger rolled her eyes. "I? Yuanfei?" Ninger was stunned for a moment. She raised her head in disbelief. "You," Peiju said, "I will not let the second person know your identity, I will let the doctor keep it secret." After finishing speaking, he walked towards the cabin, and Ninger followed with her skirt. "Hey! Brother Pei!" After entering the room, Ninger closed the door and pressed her step by step. Seeing her getting closer, Peiju took 2 steps back, and Ninger moved forward. Peiju knew whether a man and a woman could kiss each other, so he had no intention of talking to Ninger. "If you get too close, you will retreat further and stick to the wall." Ninger supported the wall with her arms, trapping Peiju between her arms. "Peiju! Peiju is really too tall and Ninger is too petite." Ninger also struggles to do such movements. She raised her head. "How did you find out?" Peiju said, "Suzhou came to Chu Palace, he wanted to find you, he asked for my permission, I had someone check it out, and only then did I know your identity." Ninger said, are you the king of Chu? Peiju nodded. Ninger was actually in distress. This man is the king of Chu. If he wants to kill him, he must not kill him casually. But if you keep it, will you treat it as a trade item? If it's handed over to Suzhou, it's okay, it's what she wants, but if it's handed over to someone else... Ninger shuddered. Peiju looked down at her, and saw her delicate eyebrows were wrinkled, showing a bit of weakness like Ziza holding her heart. Very pitiful, very soft and lovely. Ninger said, Brother Pei, do you know that the Crown Prince and I are already engaged? Peiju was silent for a moment, then nodded. Ninger pressed her heart. By now, she had already practiced the ability to tell lies without hurting her conscience. The prince is my cousin. Our marriage was arranged when we were young, but I don't like the prince at all. Ninger said, the prince has a soft appearance and a cruel temper. He is not at all as described by others. Wenye, he likes to torture the people in the room in private, and all the maids in the room are tortured to the point of being bruised. I haven't married him yet, so he doesn't torture me much, but this wound on the shoulder is what he used to control me tool of. If I'm disobedient, he won't give me the antidote. As Ninger spoke, she took the initiative to snuggle into Peiju's arms, wiping her tears with one hand. I don't want to go back, and I don't want to be hurt by him. Find. Peiju pulled her away. Do you know that if I protect you, what kind of impact will it have on the relationship between the two countries? Ninger raised her head and said, Brother Pei, don't worry, they won't say anything about it. If they can't find me, they will find someone to replace me. I'm a noble daughter of the capital, Princess Yunnan, so I can't disappear for no reason. The marriage between the original family and the royal family cannot be annulled. She tugged on Peiju's sleeve. You kindly take me in, Brother Pei, I promise I won't cause you any trouble. I don't want glory, I don't want wealth, I only live on this mountain. Peiju looked down at her. Ninger was a small ball, with a hint of innocence in her delicate eyebrows and eyes. Her eyes filled with water, which was very lovable, and her voice was soft and soft, full of prayers. Peiju had never been caught in a beauty trap, but right now, he couldn't bear it. To be honest, he didn't want to return this woman, let alone the prospective concubine of the crown prince of Nankaiu. Even if the empress of the emperor of Nankaiu fell into Peiju's domain, he would never want to leave. Peiju said, Don't worry, I won't return you. Ninger's eyes lit up, Really? Real? Ninger tilted her head, pursed her lips and smiled lightly, Then you swear? Peiju raised one hand, I swear, I won't hand you over to others. Ninger threw herself into his arms, Brother Pei, you are really kind. Peiju lifted her away, if a man and a woman can't kiss each other, don't jump on the man at every turn. After such a long conversation just now, Ninger's tongue still hurts, she said, I want to drink porridge, I want to make millet porridge. While eating, Ninger sipped the porridge while talking to Peiju, Brother Pei, since you are a prince, why do you live on this small broken mountain? Worship the ancestors. Peiju said, Don't eat or sleep, don't talk, shut up. The more he likes to keep a cold face, the more Ninger is curious about his affairs. Speaking of it, Ninger doesn't seem to have seen Peiju Xiao much. She bit the tip of the chopsticks and looked at him with watery eyes. He snatched Ninger's chopsticks, Don't hold the chopsticks in your mouth like this. Ninger lowered her head and drank the porridge slowly. At night, Ninger was lying on the bed, she turned sideways, facing Peiju's side, Brother Pei, the ground is so hard, you really don't want to go to bed. Peiju was worried that when he went to bed, she would undress him, and his innocence would be lost. No. Ninger yawned, Then I'll go to sleep. In the middle of the night, Ninger opened her eyes. She began to recall what she had heard about Peiju. King Peiju of Chu. Can this man be trusted? Ninger sat up, she was suspicious by nature, licking blood from the tip of the knife every day, she had to be cautious. In fact, after the past few days, although Ning'er's old shoulder injury can't heal, she still has the strength to leave here. After all, her identity is sensitive, she has known Peiju for a short time, and it is difficult to know people and faces. In terms of knowing people, Ning'er has suffered a lot. She came down lightly, Peiju opened his eyes, the injury hurts again. Ning'er was stunned. She got into Peiju's quilt without hesitation, it hurts. Peiju patted her on the back, don't worry, I'll take you to the doctor tomorrow. Ning'er's eyes were kept open, she couldn't fall asleep. Peiju had a very clean and refreshing aura, his whole body was very clean. The appearance is naturally 1 in a million. He looks like a gentleman, and his demeanor is very stable. With such a beauty as Ning'er in his arms, he was not half moved. But there are many people in the world who are indifferent to beauty, but addicted to power. Now that Peiju is in peace, he needs a chance to make a comeback. Ning'er knows that if he uses his properly, it can move the world for him. Will he take advantage of it? Ning'er couldn't help sighing, it would be great if he was really just an ordinary person on this mountain. Peiju didn't have as many twists and turns as Ning'er, he felt that she was always restless in his arms. Frowning slightly, Peiju said, you can't sleep. Ning'er laughed, I can't sleep because of the pain. Brother Pei, can you chat with me? Peiju let out a hum. Ning'er said softly, Brother Pei, what did Jiao say to you when he came over that day? Peiju asked her back, how is your relationship with Jiao? Ning'er said, he is the prince's cousin, and I am the prince's cousin. There is a prince between me and him, so what is the relationship? He only said that a cousin was missing, and he wanted to look for it nearby, but I refused. Ning'er said, Brother Pei, if you have difficulties, it's fine if you refuse. However, let me tell you in advance that Jiao is not a very bad person. He keeps his word and promises to do what he promises. And Jiao's tit-for-tat confrontation is king wrong. This man hearing what she was saying, Peiju paused for a moment, then Peiju pinched her chin and said, what's wrong with king wrong? There was a malicious smile on Ning'er's lips, this man is cruel and merciless. He looks weak, but in reality he has a deep scheming heart. He will do whatever it takes to achieve his goals, and he never promises any credit. Peiju said, oh, it's different from what I know. I usually get to know them better. Ning'er said, the Shu family belongs to the royal family, and the people of the royal family are more or less out of the ordinary. The crown prince is like this, and so is King Rong. Peiju rubbed Ning'er's hair, I think you're not normal, you're a good girl, but you want to sneak into a man's quilt. Ning'er closed her eyes, I can't help it. I climbed up a big tree like Brother Pei, so naturally I have to hug you tightly and refuse to let go. What if you let go and you give me away? Won't. Peiju was already used to Ning'er's body temperature. Her body was soft, and the smell on her body made him used to it. Many things, once you get used to it, you will naturally like it in your heart. But overnight, Ning'er suddenly changed her mind. If she escaped from Peiju's side and left the Lushan area, someone would naturally set up a net elsewhere. Ning'er's old wounds had not healed, even if she had great abilities, it would be very difficult for her to escape thousands of pursuers. Peiju's status was noble, neither Jiao nor King Rong dared to act rashly. I said a few more words in front of him, if Peiju traded himself, it would definitely be for Jiao. Falling into the hands of Jiao, his fate is just back on track, if it falls into the hands of King Rong Shu Nanzu. Ning'er shivered. Anyway, she only had 2 months to live. After breakfast, Peiju said, come down the mountain with me. Ning'er sat on the little donkey, and the sun was a little hot, so she wrapped a dress around her head. Along the way, Ning'er was restless. Peiju saw that she was depressed, don't worry, the doctor is from my family, even though he opened a clinic to practice medicine outside, he won't casually tell others all the information about the patients. Ning'er let out a hum. After going down the mountain, Peiju walked ahead, leading the little donkey for her, while Ning sat dangling on the little donkey. She knew that ordinary doctors could not prolong her life, but in order to reassure Peiju, she had to go and see her. Not long after the two went down the mountain, Peiju took her to a secluded place where a carriage and several attendants were parked. The lead entourage bowed to Peiju, "Your Highness." Peiju nodded. He pulled Ning off the horse, and when he regained his senses, he saw Ning staring at his followers. Those who can serve Peiju in front of him are not bad in ability and appearance. Peiju's heart was full of alarm bells, and he gave her a hand, "Get in the car." He lifted the curtain of the carriage with his own hands, and Ning got into the carriage obediently. Although these attendants didn't know the origin of the woman with the clothes on her head, but their master had always been cold and indifferent, and had never shown any kindness to women, so these attendants subconsciously didn't pay attention to this woman. "Woman." After getting into the carriage, Ning said with a smile, "Brother Pei, you have a good eye for picking people, and the people around you are all well behaved." Peiju said coldly, "They are all married." Ning let out an "oh." Peiju said again, "From now on, don't stare at others casually, you are so careless, you don't know how to be shy, you will make others look ashamed." The corners of Ning's lips turned up. "Ah? Is that so? Brother Pei, will you be ashamed if I stare at you?" Saying that, Ning raised her eyes to look at Peiju. Her small face was slightly flushed, her eyes were sparkling with water, and her lips were very moist, which was actually very pleasing. Peiju looked away. "I don't know." Ning's fingers suddenly pressed against his lips. His lips are thin, beautifully shaped, and cool. Ning's eyes curled up. "I don't feel ashamed, what can you do with me?" Peiju pushed Ning's hand away. Ning laughed. Her laughter was crisp and clear, and it spread all the way to the outside of the carriage. The attendants on horseback looked at each other in blank dismay, not knowing what kind of woman her master brought with her, her laughter was so presumptuous. 2/4 of an hour later, it was already there. Ning said, "My leg is numb, I want the prince to carry me down." Peiju raised his eyebrows, "Is it really numb?" Ning nodded, "It's really numb, am I still lying to you?" Peiju sneered, and pinched lightly on her leg. He didn't know what acupuncture point was pinched. Ning jumped up, "It hurts." Peiju said, "You still feel numb in your legs?" "No numbness anymore." Ning pouted, "You piece of wood." She raised her hand and pinched Peiju's face. "Humph! It's so boring." She jumped out of the carriage in a few steps. Seeing that the woman had finally got out of the carriage, the attendants couldn't help but cast a glance, and couldn't move their eyes from this glance. Peiju also came down. Ning saw that this was an exquisite small courtyard, with the scent of medicinal herbs floating in the courtyard. There was a wall on the east side, covered with colorful flowers, which looked very beautiful. Ning still didn't know what flowers would bloom colorfully. When we were together, we took a closer look, only to find that the flowers and plants on the wall were painted. She still wanted to look. Peiju grabbed her by the collar, "Follow me in." Ning let out an "oh." There was a bamboo curtain hanging outside the door, and the little boy raised the bamboo curtain, "His Royal Highness the King of Chu." Peiju directly dragged Ning in. The room was tidied up elegantly, there was a faint smell of herbs outside the room, but inside the room was a strong fragrance of flowers. Ning took a deep breath. Blocked by a screen, Peiju said, "Miss Lu, this king has already brought someone here." Ning didn't know who had such a big meeting. The prince came over, and didn't take the initiative to come out to meet people. At this time, the screen naturally divided into two, separated from the middle, and a woman in a lavender dress sat in the middle of the desk. She bent down and saluted, "Luzi has met His Royal Highness the King of Chu." Ning was naturally against this girl named Luzi. Luzi has a dignified appearance and gentle eyes. For some reason, Ning didn't like Luzi the first time she saw her. She was reluctant to come forward. Peiju pushed Ning, go and sit in front of Miss Lu. Ninger pouted, oh. Luzi looked at Ninger calmly. The beauty of the country that is difficult to describe in words. Standing with Peiju, he never lost color. Peiju is a dragon and a phoenix among people. In the past, people who stood with Peiju, no matter male or female, would always be suppressed by Peiju. Luzi said calmly, girl, sit down. His Royal Highness, King Chu, I haven't seen you for a few days, and Luzi doesn't know that you have hidden a stunning beauty. Peiju said, Yuan Ning, sit over. Seeing that Peiju didn't deny it, Luzi was even more displeased. Ninger sat in front of Luzi. Luzi took her pulse, and a faint chill came from Ninger's wrist. She subconsciously wanted to retract her hand, but she couldn't. Peiju said, she is weak and can't bear your internal strength to test her. Miss Lu, you can directly look at her wounds and give her a cure. Luzi let go, girl, where did you get hurt? Peiju turned around. Ninger reluctantly took off her clothes, revealing the palm prints on her shoulders. Here, this. Luzi's eyebrows eased a little. After pondering for a moment, Luzi said, girl, you can put on your clothes. Ninger put on her clothes. Luzi said, Your Highness, you can turn back now. Peiju said, she was injured. Luzi said, it was poisoned, and there was poison in the palm. This poison is called Hantoad, which is unique to Nankai country, and relatively rare in Biwan country. Your Highness, with all due respect, even in Nankai country, this poison is difficult to cure. Peiju's expression turned ugly, is there no cure? I can use acupuncture to suppress it. Luzi said, this poison usually occurs at night, because of the severe cold at night, and most patients die silently at night. This girl only has more than 1 month of life left. I use acupuncture to suppress the toxin. Barely extend it by 1 more month. Ninger was going to be blown away by this woman. But she had to pretend she didn't know anything, otherwise Peiju would catch her again. What kind of stupid and vicious doctor did Peiju show her? Ninger said, I don't want to be pricked by needles. Peiju said, don't hide from the doctor, Miss Lu, you should be gentle, she is afraid of pain. Ninger ran back, just let me die, I don't want to be pricked by needles. Peiju stopped her. He was so good at lightness kung fu, no matter how fast Ninger ran, she was finally caught by him. Peiju pressed Ninger down, don't act wild here and make others laugh. Ninger burst into tears, where is the tie? Luzi looked at the two of them coldly, on the shoulder. Your Highness, please avoid it. Ninger grabbed Peiju's hand, I don't want to be stabbed, I don't want to. Peiju was upset when he saw this woman crying, and he was also worried that if he didn't grab her, she would break free later and get stabbed by a needle. Peiju said, I'm holding her, Miss Lu, you can give the needle at ease. Luzi spread out a row of silver needles. Ninger cried until her face was covered with tears. Peiju wiped her with his sleeve, don't cry. He looked at the row of needles, although he knew it was nothing, but Ninger was an ignorant little girl after all. The little girl is artificial and afraid of pain. It is normal to be scared when seeing these things. Peiju gave Luzi a warning look, Miss Lu, be gentle with your actions. Luzi's eyelashes drooped, and she let out a hum. Peiju had already seen her once, and he didn't mind one more time. He got Ninger's acupuncture points, held her in his arms, and stretched out his hand to untie her blouse. Just now when he took the pulse, Luzi knew that Ninger was a virgin. Nothing happened between the two of them. He thought that the two were only superficially close. Seeing that Peiju was not shy about it, his heart sank even more. Luzi said, this girl is too delicate, don't worry, it won't hurt. Ninger's acupuncture points were tapped, and she couldn't say a word. Peiju put his arms around her shoulders, Miss Lu, please give the needle. Luzi held a silver needle in her hand, and gently pierced the acupuncture point. She was skilled in the technique, and within a short while, dozens of silver needles had been pricked on Ning'er's shoulder. After the silver needle was pulled out, black blood flowed out. Luzi took a veil and wiped it for her. This scene is a bit dirty, as is the case with poisoned people, your highness don't need to notice it. Peiju put Ning'er's clothes on and then released her acupuncture points. Ning'er couldn't hold back, and burst into tears with a wow. Peiju also didn't know how to coax people, his body was stiff. Don't cry. Luzi's face darkened. Girl, the needles don't hurt, I hope you won't disturb the cleanliness of this place. Peiju frowned. She is timid, don't talk about her. Miss Lu, the cleanliness of this place is given to you by this king. Luzi choked. Ning'er really hurts, there is no need to force out the black blood, even if forced out, more blood will pour into here. She scolded this quack doctor in her heart, wishing she could rush up and tear Luzi's face off. Peiju put Ning'er down, come back with me. Ning'er sniffled. Originally her tongue was bitten that day and she couldn't speak very quickly, but now her speech is even more blurred. The pain makes my legs weak, I can't walk. Peiju didn't know whether she was in real pain or fake pain. However, when such a long needle goes in, even if it doesn't hurt, it will still feel pain in my heart. He squatted down, I'll carry you on my back. Ning'er lay down on her stomach, still crying, it hurts, it hurts. Luzi's heart hurts from Ning'er's anger, she doesn't know what's so good about this woman who speaks rudely, she can still catch Peiju's eyes with such a pretentious way, making Peiju treat him differently. Peiju carried her on his back into the carriage, and on the carriage, Ning'er was still crying, her tears were too much, no matter how hard she cried, she couldn't stop crying. But the appearance of crying is still very good looking, with red eyes, very cute and pitiful, as if he was deliberately bullied by him. Peiju didn't know how to coax her. He patted Ning'er's shoulder, don't cry. Ning'er let out a hum, shook off his hand, turned her face to the other side and continued to cry. Peiju said, you look ugly when you cry, don't cry. You look better when you don't cry. She cried even harder. Peiju wiped her tears with his hand, his palm was used to holding a sword all year round, it was very rough, it made her tender skin turn white and red. Peiju said, Miss Lu is wrong, she hurts too much from the needle, don't cry, I will replace you with another doctor. What Peiju wanted was not to extend Ning'er's lifespan by a month, what he wanted was for Ning'er to survive. Since Luzi couldn't meet his request, he had to change to another doctor. Luzi is already the most famous goddess doctor in Chu, and she became famous in Chu at a young age. Luzi once offended noble people, the hospital was burned down, Peiju saved Luzi's life a few years ago, so Luzi also obeyed the Chu palace these years. Except for Luzi, there is no suitable female doctor, but at the moment of life and death, I don't care about the difference between men and women. She cried for a while and felt sleepy, Peiju poured her a cup of tea, drink water. Ning'er took a sip of tea. Peiju said, during this time, do you want to live in the palace? Ning'er shook her head, no, I don't like the palace, I just like the mountains. If she sees the situation as wrong, she will run away at any time. The palace is heavily guarded and there are too many people watching, which is not conducive to her actions. Seeing that her eyes and nose were red from crying, Peiju felt upset. Peiju didn't like Ning'er crying like this, when she cried, it always made people feel flustered, wanting to give her something, but not knowing what she would want. That's on the mountain. Peiju said, just tell me what you want. Ning'er bit her lip, I want to eat candied haws. When they got to the place, Ning'er sat on the little donkey, and Peiju bought her 2 bunches of candied haws. Ning'er took a bite and said, Brother Pei, just give up looking for a doctor, I don't want to live a long life either. Ah, you don't know, the rest of life is long, what others taste is sweet, but what I taste it's bitter. Peiju raised his hand and tapped Ninger's head, "Don't talk nonsense." She smiled slyly. To tell the truth, Peiju can easily see others lying in front of him, but Ninger, when she speaks casually, people can never tell whether she is telling the truth or lying. The place where Ninger's shoulder was pricked by the needle was always aching. She took a bite of a candied horse. "I won't eat, I can't eat any more, Brother Pei, do you want to eat?" Peiju said, "Throw it away if you can't eat it." Ninger muttered softly, "It's not good to waste it." She took another bite, and after taking a bite, she sneaked a peek at Peiju. "It's delicious, you really don't want to eat it?" Saying that, Ninger raised it to Peiju's lips, "Take a bite." Peiju took a bite out of disgust. "It's sour, and I don't know what to eat." Ninger stuffed candied haws into Peiju's hands, "You eat." She hugged the little donkey's neck and fell asleep on the donkey's back. When they reached the mountain, Peiju picked up Ninger and put her on the bed. She slept very soundly. Maybe there is no reason for not sleeping well these days. During the day, she slept very deeply. Peiju covered Ninger with a blanket. Her hand suddenly grabbed Peiju's. Peiju's fingers are very slender, and the shape of the hand is very nice. Although the pads of the fingers are a bit rough, they still give people enough sense of security. Ninger's hands are soft and boneless, small, with delicate skin, snow white and crystal clear, only a little flesh powder on the nails. Peiju didn't push her hand away, he waited for Ninger to turn over in her sleep before Peiju left. Ninger had a very long dream. In the dream, she was still young, childish, with a slightly gloomy brow. With a bang, the priceless jade bottle and coral were all smashed to the ground by Ninger. Ninger paced back and forth in the room. Why? Why? She was questioning the people in the room, and everyone held their breaths, not daring to say a word. Ninger tore her clothes. "I want to go out." "You all get out! Get out!" The door was opened suddenly. The young man was tall and slender like a pine cypress, dressed in white, with half black hair, looking at Ninger coldly. Ninger only reached his waist. The young man Suizhuerhan said, "Everyone get out." After everyone left, Suzhou looked down at the little dumpling in front of him. Ninger's eye circles gradually turned red. "I hate everyone, I want to die. It's unspeakably expensive, unspeakably miserable, this is your life." Suzhou slowly leaned over, "Silly boy, I can't change it." As the sun set, it shone in through the west window. The young Ninger sat on the ground. She didn't want to be dominated by others. She wanted to be free and not imprisoned. Ninger was sweating all over, and when she opened her eyes, it was already dark. She is no longer a child at the mercy of others. Ninger covered her heart with her hands. Now, she was free, but she was about to die.